Hi everyone, welcome. We are just gonna hang tight for a minute and then we'll kick off shortly. Thank you everyone.
Just while everyone's joining, I'd love to know where you're from. So if you can pop into the chat who you are, where you're dialing in from today, and by where you're from, that might mean what's up to you, right? Is it your location? Is it the organization you work with? Is it an intent? Coming from a place of clear intent today?
Want me to start off?
Hey, Michael, welcome.
Okay.
Michael from Melbourne, Australia. Lovely.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, so I'm Howard Barton from Sydney.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, Howard. We might kick off now. We've got people and then I'll let everyone in as they come through. So thank you everyone for joining what is now the 12th in the series of workshops hosted by the Social Impact Hub as part of the RISE program and supported by the Westpac Foundation and Paul Ramsey Foundation. So before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we meet today. For me, that is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I'd like to pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging, as well as extending this more broadly, acknowledging that we are collectively dialing from a range of locations as well. So my name is Jess, and on behalf of the broader team at the Social Impact Hub, we had the privilege of working alongside a range of fantastic people and organizations in the for-purpose sector in developing these series of workshops. But before we dive in, we just have some online housekeeping. If you can keep yourself on mute, that'd be great. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to raise your hand and make use of the chat function. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. So please turn on your camera where possible. If you have any technical challenges, feel free to private message me and I'll try my best to help. So that's everything from me. So now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Adam Long, who's our facilitator for today, take you through the next 90 minutes on social media for social enterprises. So over to you, Adam.
Hello, everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, how you're feeling, how much coffee you've had. So we're going to jump in and spend the next 90 minutes talking about social media for social enterprises. And social media is one of those topics that's both exciting and it's challenging. The excitement is that there's a lot that you can do with it. It's such a broad tool that you can use and manipulate in so many ways. The challenge is whenever I bring up social media, most people go, oh, but it's also really frustrating. Way back in 2008, I remember seeing somebody at a conference and they said, this is the way of the future and it's going to be amazing and you've got to get on board it right now. And so we got on board and we started blogs and we set up our page and we started posting motivational quotes and nothing really happened. Where were the promises that they said would come? Where were all the people coming? Where was the flood of community we're expecting? So social media stands as, of all the marketing channels, possibly the one with the most potential, but also the one with the most frustration sitting around it. So that's why we're going to unpack the nuances of why it matters and how to use it for social enterprises in particular, recognizing that the way we do business as social enterprises is a little bit different to the rest of the world. So the way we can use social media needs to be a little bit different as well. So I'm Adam, I'm calling in from Sydney, which is Gadigal land, belonging to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I'd like to remind everyone that this is not television. I love those of you who have your cameras on. Thank you so much. That's such useful feedback for me because what it means is I can see when your eyes are lighting up, you're like, oh, okay, that's clearly resonating. I better speak a little bit more on that. I can also see when you start going, picking up the phone. Like, don't turn your camera off if you're bored and you'd rather look at your phone. Like, at least show me you're doing that so I know I'm being boring and I can move on a little bit and talk about something a little more interesting. Use the chat. If you've got questions at any time, if you've got a comment, if you've got a story, if you've got hey, I've got a particular situation in my business that I'm not sure how this relates to, put it in the chat and I will try and address it as we go. That way we can treat this more as a workshop, more as a conversation, and not as a television show. So be active. Hello to everyone who's jumped on the chat. Hi, Nara. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Jenna. Hi, Gary. Hi, Ipsita. Hi, Louise, Jay, Karen, Michael. Good to have you all with us here today. And Nara, thanks for your comment about the camera there. Acknowledge that. I'll just imagine what you look like. You're looking gorgeous today. I love your outfit. Thanks so much for being here. So, social media. Probably the defining moment for me in social media was, well, I was at an afternoon conference at the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago, and I started getting messages from my team at a sock company I'm a co-founder at. The sock company is called Conscious Step. If you ever meet me in person, chances are I won't be wearing shoes because you don't hide the merchandise. These are socks that support different charities. Each one supports a different organization. The one I'm wearing today protects koalas affected by these awful bushfire seasons. The one you can see on screen provides 3 meals for kids in refugee camps. And I was in this conference and getting these messages from the team at Conscious Step saying, hey, something's going on. We're getting this huge spike in traffic. Do you know what's happening? And we traced back where all this traffic to our website was coming from. And the World Economic Forum had decided to post a video about Conscious Step. Now, they've got several million followers. And at the time I messaged like, oh, this video's got 10,000 views. This is epic. We've never got 10,000 views on anything we've put on social media before. But then by the end of that day, 578,000 views was where that landed. It drove all sorts of traffic, new subscribers, new sales, new customers, new partners, all came from that one video, which wasn't even done by us. It was posted by someone else. And so we spent the days after and weeks after saying, right, how do we replicate this? How do we do it again? How do we get our next 600,000 view video? How do we get that out to the world? And what really struck us was that the thing that made the difference and the thing that made this possible actually wasn't the things we were doing on our own social media channels. It was the networks we were building. So at a conference like the World Economic Forum, you've got people like Al Gore standing in one corner and people are lining up to talk to him, and Matt Damon's over there as well, and he's hanging out, and you can go and get your photo with Jane Goodall. But I had a chat to the person who ran the social media for the World Economic Forum, and it was taking an interest in her life and getting to know her story that ironically led us to the biggest thing we could have done on our social media, more than the eventual photo with Matt Damon that came along. Yep, there he is. I got my photo with him too. It's good to know he's wearing Conscious Step socks. That's always a good thing to do. But the magic move there was not who we were with. It was the connections that we'd made with the right people and the partners. It wasn't about the content we were getting, the ambassadors we were getting. It was about making the right relationship with people who could spread the word for us. So that's one story from Conscious Step. And today I'll be drawing on stories from a whole bunch of different organizations I've been involved in. Back in the day, I used to run a 40-person marketing agency called Step Change. At the same time, started Conscious Step at Glebe Markets in Sydney. That was nearly 10 years ago now. And these days we're in a few thousand stores around the world. And we've just crossed the milestone of raising more than $1 million for charity through these socks. Woohoo, yay. Only took us 8 years. I thought it would take us 3, but we always overestimate what we can get to, right? The last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of work with Humanitics, which of course you all know because you bought the ticket to today's event through. So Humanitics is an awesome organization. They're a charity, no shareholders, they're a charity. And they run a ticketing platform, a bit like Eventbrite, but of course, those booking fees that pop up at the end when you buy your ticket, they all go towards programs that support kids' education around the world, rather than going into the pockets of shareholders in Silicon Valley, which to me sounds like a really good way of doing business. So I operate under the brand The Ethical CEO. That kind of wraps up all the different businesses I'm involved in, and I do help other organizations as well. But we're not here to talk about me, we're here to talk about you. So in your chat, in the chat box, please, down the bottom, if you hover, there should be a little chat button there. Jump in there and let me know, what's your biggest burning question when it comes to social media? Won't necessarily be able to answer them all, but if you tell me now, I can kind of shape things and spend more time on case studies and stories that are going to be more relevant, more important for you. If you ask me in 80 minutes time when the clock's counting down, there's 30 seconds to go, we got less of a chance of actually getting there. Yumi, thanks for your question. How do we get 1 million followers? Great, good question to get started with. You can buy them. They're about $17 per 1,000, and there are companies that use combinations of server farms. They use networks of people that have like 10 devices in front of them, just like each other. You can get 1 million followers really easily. Question is, do you really need 1 million followers? Is that actually going to make a difference to your goals? We'll talk about that a little bit. How do we target and get ourselves in front of the right people? We're a B2B social enterprise. That's a good question. Not the 1 million people, the right people. I love that. Yeah, let's talk about that. How do we get more engagement in what we do? Yeah. How much time does a very effective cut through social media strategy take? Yeah, that's a good question. Brad, LinkedIn is best for B2B. Cool. Keep those questions coming. Now, you ready for the answer to all the questions? Ta-da! It's all possible through Google. That's the most annoying answer someone could give, isn't it? You're probably wondering, why am I giving up my time for him to tell me to Google the answers? Look, for most strategies, tactics, tools that you can use, there's already a stack of information out there. But usually the biggest question isn't what to do, it's what should you want to do? And this is the bridge that we need to get from social media as a frustrating thing that doesn't quite deliver on results to actually knowing what results we're after. So we need to recognize that social media sits within our marketing mix. And it's called a mix for a reason, because there is no way to reach all your customers or all your potential customers all the time on every channel. Whether it's your website, whether you're emailing them, whether you're calling them, whether you're seeing them at an event, or whether it's on social media, we never get 100% cut through. So it's really important that we recognize that this is a mix of activities that we need to be doing. And that's where we get to pull out our marketing strategy hat. So strategy is my favorite thing to talk about with anyone. And it's also an overused word that nobody really can define. When I ask, what does strategy mean for you? I normally hear things like, oh, well, strategy is just the plan, right? If we list out everything we're going to do over the next few months and we call it a strategic plan, that's a strategy. Oh, well, that's not quite a strategy, is it? Or sometimes people say strategy is our ambition. Our strategy is to be supplier of choice or to be number one. It's like, well, that's an ambition, but that doesn't really tell you how to get there. Look, the one thing I want you to remember when you hear the word strategy is this word below it, which is choice. Strategy is choices about where we put our limited resources, because we've only got so much time, we've only got so much attention we can give to things, we've only got so much budget to spend on things. And the big thing about social media is this perception that it's free. It's free, right? You just jump on Facebook, you can start doing it straight away, but it's not free. Because whether you're getting paid or not right now, I want you to get paid for what you do. If you just started a social enterprise, you should be thinking, how do I get paid? Because when you get paid and can pay your rent and can look after your family, you can work harder and go further with your social enterprise. And so if you're spending time on social media, that time does have a value. That time should be paid for. If you're paying someone else to do it in a salary, yeah, there's a cost there as well. So we need to recognize that where we put our marketing budget could be in social media, but we have to make choices about where to put it that's going to be most effective. And why is choice hard? Because it hurts. It literally hurts to make choices and give things up. Like if I said to you today, actually the best thing for you to do is not do any social media at all, just don't do it. Like shut down your accounts and go focus elsewhere. I reckon for most of you, there's a little bit of, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't give that up. We've got our followers on, like, no, we can't do that. It hurts to put focus in smaller areas, but it does do wonderful things when you can focus on doing fewer, better things. So how do people approach strategy usually? So usually when it comes to social media, we say, okay, what's our social media strategy? The conversation starts with the medium. And those of you who've seen me talk before have probably seen this before, because it is the most important thing you need to know about marketing strategy. So most people start with the medium. They talk about the channel. They say, all right, let's do a Facebook campaign, or let's start posting on LinkedIn. Well, now my definition of social media is a bit broader than just these channels, right? So maybe you're thinking, let's do a podcast series, let's start blogging, let's run a webinar series. All of these things kind of come into the mix. And usually part of the brainstorm says, great, yep, we're doing the podcast, we're doing the blogs, we're going to start posting on Facebook. And you know what, let's keep ourselves accountable this time. We're going to post 3 times a week. And so the medium gets locked in. And then the next question comes up. Message, what are we going to say? What are we going to put on these posts 3 times a week? And so, throw a few ideas around. And then we start to get to the point where we've been working on it for a couple of months and it's ticking along, and someone says, hey, who's seeing all this stuff that we're doing? Are we reaching the right audience with our podcast? Are we getting to the right people on Facebook? It looks like it's just the staff that are liking all our posts. Like, who are we actually reaching through this? And then there's that tough question, which no one really wants to ask, is, are we getting a result from this? Is this actually delivering what we need to? And of course, the big challenge for anyone with marketing in their job title is they need to justify their role. So that's why Facebook gives you all the dashboards to show you, of course, you're getting results. Look at all this engagement. Look at all the likes you've got. You got this many new followers this week. Of course, that's a result. But for you as a leader in your organization, whether marketing is in your job title or not, the question of result goes beyond what any one of these dashboards can show you. The question is, well, is this actually driving sales? Is this bringing in new partnerships? Is this reducing our customer service load? So this is the way the conversation usually has, but what's wrong with this picture? There's something really wrong with this picture. Give it to me in hand signals if you've got it. Should probably be the other way around, right? Conversation shouldn't start with medium, it should start with result. This is the where it starts to get tricky. So if we can narrow down a particular result that we're after from our social media, and I don't mean a result like we want more sales. I mean going deeper than that. We want more sales as a first order level of thinking. The way you get more sales is by choosing an audience that's going to be easier to convert than others. You don't want to reach everyone. You want to reach just enough people to get to your next financial goal, to be able to make that next hire, to make that next investment, to pay the rent for this week. And when you're narrowing down that audience of what's the smallest group you need to reach, then it gets easier to think, what message do they need to hear? I should be pointing. Oh yeah, there we go. Then you can get to what's the message that group of people needs to hear. And then finally the question, what's the best channel to put that message in front of that audience? Well, this is reversed on my screen to get to that result. Geez, I need to be an octopus to do this. I suddenly feel for all the weather presenters out there. So if there is one thing you take away from this that's going to be valuable for your discussions about social media, it's just this. If you're going to take a screenshot of anything for your notes, take a screenshot of this. I'm ready for you. Yeah, got your screenshots? Good. Result, audience, message, medium. Your job as a leader in your organization is that anytime someone says, right, we're doing social media, that you anchor them back to a result first. And we're going to go deeper on that today and talk about what kind of results are useful to lean into. And then when they say, we want to increase our followers, your job is to come back with who, which followers, why do we want those people in particular? What are we trying, again, what result are we trying to get from them? And then when they say, let's come up with some motivational quotes to share, or take pictures around the office, or let's do a series on the staff members' dogs. Much as I'd love to see that, I'm a dog person. You got to go back with the question, is that the message that audience needs to hear in order to get that result? And then the final question around, is this the right channel? That becomes a lot easier. So there's a bit of an implication there. And the implication is this: it is not your job to entertain people on a daily basis. That is what social media is for from Facebook's perspective. That is not what social media should be from your perspective. Social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, they make money by getting people hooked, addicted, unable to put their phone down in any moment where there's a gap. They pick it up for a little bit of entertainment. That's what they want. That's not what you want. Your job is not to entertain. Your job is to get people to a result. And I put there, it's not even the unpaid intern's job. Again, there's a cost, even if they're a volunteer intern. Getting them on social media may not actually be the most important thing for them to work on. So of all the businesses I've ever been involved in, this is my favorite Facebook page that we set up. This is for Smarter Drafter. And it says, we invest our time in lawyers, not Facebook. Invest our time in lawyers, not Facebook. This is a Facebook page we set up deliberately to never post on, because we've gone through that discussion. Now, Smarter Drafter is software used by lawyers for lawyers. It's basically making robot lawyers that they can employ in their workspace. And we knew that of all the things we could be doing, from going to conferences to running webinar series to writing press releases to calling them to being on social media, that actually social media was going to be the least effective thing we could do. So rather than have a bit of a desert wasteland, which no one turns up to and fret over having only 20 followers in the early stages of the business, we just put this sign up and said, we're not going to post here at all. We just won't do it at all. And that's okay, because that's a choice you can make. So that is the absolute minimum. We've got to the absolute baseline of social media. You can actually choose not to do it at all. And I may be the only social media speaker you ever hear to say this. I want you to know it's okay to make that choice and focus elsewhere if something is going to be more effective. So if we're going to use this framework around result, audience, message, and medium, let's have a chat about how we actually use this for social media. So first thing is the results that we're actually trying to get to. So if it's not to entertain people on a daily basis, is it perhaps one of these instead? First point here is that it might be part of a customer's journey or a decision-making process. And I put in the example of aged care there, for example. In the process of deciding which aged care facility for someone to become a resident at, there's a bit of a due diligence that happens by that person and their loved ones, their carers who are helping them make a decision. They go, oh, before mum and dad goes and moves into this site, I'd better make sure I've done my background research. How do we do background research? We type it into Google. Social media is probably going to be one of the first things to come up. In this case, we recognize that social media exists just to get that person who's thinking, is this the right one, to validate that decision? The social media needs to back up everything they've seen on the website and the phone calls and prove that when they say we create a community here, that there is actually a community here. When they say we create a fun environment on a daily basis, there's evidence that there's a fun environment on the daily basis. And so we can see that of all the steps, that's where it's going to fit most importantly. Now, in that case, we're not talking about generating new leads for this aged care facility. So sitting down saying, all right, what are we going to post that's going to get 100 new people to move into our facility over the next 5 years? You might say that's actually a result we're not focusing on at all. We recognize that we have a role at one point in a customer journey and we need to show up there. The second suggestion there is a reminder or prompt for past customers. That's where Conscious Step uses our social media, for example. We don't get new business from social media most of the time. The exception was that video I showed you at the start, because it was put into an entirely new audience. But you'll notice that Conscious Step is really active on Instagram, on Facebook. We're putting posts out constantly. But it's actually a reminder for people who've bought from us before to come back again. And we're very conscious that that's what it's for. We're not really going to get new customers in the door by posting on our own Instagram. We're really only reaching people that we already have a relationship with. So our job there is to show up at the right time with the right reminder so that they come back. And when it's been 12 months since they last bought them for Father's Day, we need to give them a reason to buy this again. Sure, you bought it last Father's Day, but here's why you need to again. And that's the role that social media takes there. The next suggestion there is around activating partnerships. Sometimes the role of your social media is to actually give you an asset that you can leverage in conversation with others. This might be the only occasion where having 1 million followers is the goal that you want. If your job is to then do an exchange of value and you're trying to get another organization to cross-promote you, you want to be the one turning up with the followers, but it's recognizing that the 1 million followers in that case are really just a proof point as to why this organization should partner with you. They're not going to be the 1 million followers that you're getting sales from on a daily basis. So again, worth recognizing what role does it really play. The other role it might play, and I mentioned here, is actually customer service. And this is a really strong one for Humanitics. A lot of people asking questions on a daily basis on how do they get things done? How do they use certain features or tools? So having your social media as part of your customer service mix might be the reason that you're on board there, in which case the types of things that you're posting are solving the biggest problems that are coming up on a regular basis, the ones that your team is spending the most time on the phone trying to problem solve for, try to solve it before that they get there. So that's a couple of examples. That's not an exhaustive list, but a couple of examples of a narrow focus result as to what your social media might be doing. So what's yours? I want you to post yours into the chat, and it'll help me a bit if you tell me what your business is called and what it does. So you might go Conscious Step, ethical socks. We use it to activate past customers and get them to buy again. Let's just pop those into the chat. Now this might be a little bit hard, and that's okay. We haven't talked about this framework before. You're coming into it fresh. We need to think about it a little bit differently. And I know the temptation is going to be the result we're after is new sales, just sales, just sales. I want you to go 1 or 2 levels deeper and go, where would those sales come from? Who do you really need to reach in order to get those sales? So just give everyone a moment to pop that into the chat. And that way I can use some of those as examples as we go through the next ones. AVI International Development, we're using social media to tell stories of our impact. Awesome. So Ipsita, I'd love you to think about what's the impact of telling those stories? Who are those stories really for? Is it for the people you're making an impact on? Is it actually to show donors and grant writers that you're using the money the way you said it will, the way you said you will? Go a little bit deeper if you can. All right, what have we got? Karen's after new leads not based on referrals, so whole new people. So unlocking an entire new audience. Great, thanks, Karen. Older Women's Network New South Wales, empowering women as they age, creating awareness to prompt better decisions at the ballot box. Ooh, nice one, political, love it. Good one. Recently restarted my startup. It aims to educate the local community of Melbourne on how to implement a planetary health diet through a revolutionary interactive educational platform. Love it. Okay, so Nanisha, the question for you is, can you go narrower on who you're trying to reach? So of the local community, who's most likely to lean into and adopt your planetary health diet first? Or are there particular influences you need to reach? Awesome. I'm just going to have a quick scan through the others and not read them all out, but I love that you're all thinking in terms of results. Excellent. Still figuring it out. Love it. Love the honesty there. Hopefully this framework will help you start to figure that out as well. And remember, this is hard because strategy is choice and choice is hard. The temptation here is to say, let's do everything. Let's get new leads. Let's activate past customers. Let's do our customer service here. Let's reach out to our past networks as well. Yes, eventually, but get established in one before you build on all the others. So I want to give you an example of when you can get really nuanced about which result you're after. And yes, I've had a couple of questions about the recording and the notes. Jess, with the slides and the recording will go out afterwards. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, cool. Good. Yes, you will get a copy of all of these things. So in March last year, we all remember that week when the pandemic went from something that was happening overseas to other people to something that was happening here to us. And there was a week where it felt like every day you're waking up and it's Star Trek going, what's the damage report? And you're finding out something new's going on. And in that week, there was a couple of changes. Firstly, the government said, I'm very sorry, we're going to have to limit events to 500 people. And then they said, we're going to have to limit events to 100 people. Actually, it's 50. Actually, it's 10 unless it's a wedding or a funeral. Now, if you work at Humanitics, as I did at the time, and you hear, uh-oh, every event is suddenly cancelled, that is an absolute disaster. That meant organizers refunding tickets to their to the people who had bought them. And just a little nuance here. So Humanitics actually refunds their booking fees if a ticket gets refunded. It's a little bit cheeky that the other platforms don't do that. So the poor event organizers refunded all their money, but event providers kept theirs. So the downside to that is when every single event is cancelled, Humanitics is handing back all that money that was going to go to charity programs and run their operating costs. So we thought, all right, we've got to help people transition to online events. Let's do an educational series. Let's write an ebook on how to run incredible online events. And we recognize that there are two opportunities that might come out of a situation like this. Result A, so one opportunity was to go, all right, look, we've got all these event organizers who are canceling their events. What if we help them to not cancel their events? What if we help them with that transition to an online event? That way they won't cancel it and refund all those tickets. That would be a really good result. And someone else pointed out that actually there's some big events that need to shift to online as well. There's conferences, there's music festivals, and there's some unique ways they can actually shift online so that they can keep run their event as well. And actually, we might get new organizers that have never used Humanitics before, but because everything's changing, now is the perfect time for them to come across and use us. So two very interesting opportunities on the table. And the first thing for us was to work out which one of these actually matter. Because if you imagine an ebook written for the first group, it's all going to be very practical. Here's how you set it up. Here's the tools you need to use. Just follow this checklist. It's step by step. If it's the second audience, which are big event organizers, they already know most of the tools. They don't need a step-by-step on how to use Zoom. They want a bit of inspiration and belief that they can take a massive event, run it online, and it will be a meaningful, powerful experience. So what ends up in the campaign is going to be very, very different based on which of these that you choose. So in the end, we did focus on result A and make sure we had some quick resources available so that those events didn't need to be cancelled. But this is kind of an example of the discussion you should be having up front about the result that you're after. The direction you choose is going to make a very big difference to what you end up putting on your social media later. All right, so then the question is around target audience and core audience. So again, it's not everyone, it's just who do you actually need to reach in order to get that result? And we're thinking smaller rather than bigger, right? So you can reach everyone eventually, but you will go so much further if you choose a smaller subset to focus on. Humanitics in that moment needed to be the absolute best in that moment for small community event organizers who weren't getting support anywhere else. We wanted to reach the big event organizers, but that was for later. We knew we could get on the phone with them later, have a small audience, have a tight definition up front. So once you've chosen that audience, it's time to really get to know them. And this is an exercise that every business should go through for their entire marketing mix, not just for social media, but you want to understand these 6 things about what's going on in the world. So the first one is drivers, and the drivers is basically a driver of a decision. Why does someone really come across to you to work with you, support you, promote you? What's the real driver there? So for Conscious Step, for example, the driver there is actually gifting. We know that our socks are given as gifts more than anything else, which was actually a bit of a surprise. When we started the business, we thought men would buy it for themselves to make themselves look good. No, turns out it's mostly women buying them as gifts. So what's really motivating a purchase or an interaction with you? One below that is pain points. What don't they like about your industry? And this is interesting because we don't exist in a vacuum. Every customer you might want to reach is already interacting with someone. They've already got their habits, so it might be behavior that's existing. There might be a particular competitor. There might be a class of competitors that you're switching them from. But if we understand what's annoying about that incumbent, what the downside of that behavior is, what the downside of those competitors are, we can lean into that and we can present messages that remind them, oh yeah, actually you should think about switching. And this becomes more and more important, the less engaged your audience is. So take, for example, superannuation is probably one of the hardest industries to get people to switch on, because most people don't think about their superannuation until later in life, until it's becoming more important. So getting young people to think about switching their superannuation is a really, really hard thing to do. And the way most are doing it is actually through pain points around the ethical side of superannuation. So it's actually a remarkable story that's come out that way. So all these people working in superannuation companies who, let's face it, not everyone has ethics as their number one goal when they go to work every day. But these people had a look, and of all the people that were changing their superannuation, the ones who were changing it for ethical reasons. And so even the ones that didn't care about ethics realized we've got to get on board with this because it's the only way we're able to reach an audience. So let's point out all the pain about having your super in the wrong spot and go from there. And that's actually why nearly every superannuation fund now has ethical investment options, because of those very, very few people who are switching. All right, so that's the pain points. Triggers. When and where are they thinking about you? So triggers is all about the moment in time that you reach them. If you're a coffee brand, don't advertise to people at 9 o'clock at night when they're about to go to bed. Sounds kind of obvious when we do it like that. But then for your organization, when are they actually thinking about you? And it might be a moment in the day, it might be a moment in the year. Maybe it's at tax time. Maybe it's when certain things turn up on the news. That's when we need to be turning up the next day in their inbox with the right messages. Maybe it's when they're on the bus, or when they're traveling, or that there's a better time to reach them. But really have a think about those moments. Fears and barriers are here, so that's all the reasons they might ignore you or write you off. We need to acknowledge them very early. And then in understanding who they are, we want to understand their psychological makeup, their values, beliefs, and attitudes, and what's also going on in their lifestyle. And I'll show you an example of how to do that. We'll do this one first. So mapping their year. With a little bit of Googling, you'll be able to find a whole bunch of calendars that show everything that's going on in a given year. Like, what do we got here? We've got World Meditation Day, World Goth Day, 22nd of May. Don't miss that. World Goth Day, get your eyeliner ready. National Sorry Day, World Hunger Day on the 28th of May. So there are campaigns going on every day somewhere in the world. There are holidays. There are, those of you selling B2B, there's those tax cycle days that you just have to be aware of. And mapping these out and making sure that you have a message related to what your audience cares about is a good way to start getting on their radar and planning ahead. So I want to give you an example of some activity. This is done by Smarter Draft. This is the one that I pointed out at the start, where we had a Facebook page that we told people not to go to. So when we sat down and said, what are our lawyers, what is our audience really interested in? We had a challenge that we were trying to get them to switch to a bit of software that would take something that they'd spend 10 hours on and do it in 15 minutes. Most people would go, awesome, I just got 9 hours, 45 minutes of my life back. Lawyers go, I could have billed for 9 hours and 45 minutes. I can't reduce my billings down to 15 minutes. So the only way that they could actually use our software was if they also changed their business model to charging a fixed price for what they do. If they're going to do a will, instead of thinking, oh, it'll probably take me 4 hours to write that up, they need to think, what is this worth? What value does this deliver to my customer? And then charge for that. Now, when we went and interviewed all these lawyers, they said, but what do I charge? It was the question we got asked again and again and again. What should we charge for this? And that question became the basis for a campaign that rolled out over the next 18 months, answering that one question: what should I charge for this document? So we ran a survey of fixed price legal services in Australia. We went out to all these lawyers who are normally too busy to speak to any kind of marketers or salespeople and said, hey, we're going to answer that question for you. You want to know how much other people are charging? We're going to find out and answer it for you. And we'd just like you to fill out our survey to participate in that. Now, surveys can sometimes be frustrating, right? Because you send it out and then the results start to trickle in. But we were actually asking for about 30 minutes of a lawyer's time to get them to fill out a survey. How do you get a lawyer to take 30 minutes that could be billing to somebody else and get them to fill out a survey instead? Well, what we did was put a value on it. We told them that when we finished answering this question that you want to know the answer to, we're going to write a report with the list of every fixed fee pricing and what lawyers are charging in city versus rural areas and New South Wales versus Victoria and all that kind of thing. And you can buy that report at the end. It's going to be $3,500 if you want to buy it. But if you fill out the survey, we'll give it to you for free. Now, we didn't really expect that people would pay $3,500 for this survey. Maybe they would have, but we didn't really count on that. What we counted on was that lawyers were going to hear, I can get something worth $3,500 for 30 minutes of my time. That is a good value exchange. So we ended up having 800 lawyers fill out this survey. Now, from that survey, we found out what lawyers are charging for wills, for employment documents, for shareholders agreements, for so many different things. We found out the differences between what they were charging in the cities versus rural areas. We found out some lawyers were charging for wills on an hourly rate less than a massage therapist. And that became the headline that got us into all the news media across the legal sector: lawyers charging less than massage therapists for key work. When we found out that lawyers in cities were charging as much as 5 times as much as lawyers in rural areas, we had the content for more social media posts that got shared by all the news media, specifically for lawyers. So all of this came from starting with what questions are these lawyers really asking us? What are the salespeople hearing on a regular basis, and building a campaign around that? And this one is a good illustration that social media is not just your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, your Instagram, what you're posting. It's part of a journey. And the materials that you build, the way you reach out for a survey, what then goes on your social media, but then what also drives press releases, what you can talk about at conferences, treating this as one campaign rather than isolating just your Facebook page content is a way to make sure you've got really good content across the whole spectrum. All right, so messaging. If we've made choices on what we're really trying to achieve and the audience we're after, what messages are we going to say to them? Your message should ultimately fall out of these first two choices, result and audience. And a good way to think of it is your pillars of content. They're your go-to topics that you can reach back to again and again and create content for, so that when you're sitting down on Monday, go, oh, what post are we coming up with this week? You've got a starting point. You've got your strategy already clear. So I want to give you an example of what that actually looks like. So this is for an organization that provides specialist disability accommodation. I don't have permission to name the specifics about them, but I'll just tell you generally around them. So these guys are freaking awesome. They're making homes specifically for people with disability, and they're some of the nicest homes I've ever seen. Like the standard of design that they brought. So I'm like, oh, I want to move in there. That looks so good. So they're doing really well from that perspective. Now they have a goal, which is to get the people with disabilities and their carers and support network to be choosing their housing. Now remember that example I gave at the start around aged care, and I said there's a point in a customer journey where social media matters for them. It's the same for this group and this sector. So people who are researching specialist disability accommodation, there's a point where they've got their shortlist and they go, all right, well, let's do our due diligence. And across these three providers, the one I saw on TV, the first one that came up on Google, and this one, are they actually living up to their value proposition? So in this case, what made these guys special and made them different are these four pillars. So one is their level of design. Great design, first class when it comes to the places that they're building. Second thing is they were promising a community. Now, community is it feels like one of those words that falls in the same bucket as cool or trust, or you know words that when somebody says that they're that, you kind of don't believe them. If someone says, trust me, you instantly don't trust them. If someone says, yeah, I'm cool, they're kind of not cool because they had to say it. Or when they say, we care about our customers, do you, or you just say, so same with community. Really hard to just claim, yes, we're great at community, we're all about community. You have to demonstrate it. And so that was one of the content pillars for this organization, which is actually showing the community that was created in the words of the residents themselves. So you can see interviews with residents was part of the regular posting that was going out. Third thing for them was location. They put a lot of effort into choosing the right kind of location for their specialist accommodation. And so that meant considering where the nearest shopping centers are, where the nearest parks are, is the local bus stop actually easy enough to get a wheelchair into. So the content theme that comes out of that is, what do we love about the neighborhoods in which these centers exist? And that ranged from 7 best coffee shops in the area to the best parks. I'll show you some examples shortly. And then also demonstrating the lifestyle that they're creating for their customers. So 2 examples, as one, meet the team, meet the stories of the community, not just saying community, but demonstrating it. Or things we love about Auburn, just the fact that in autumn, the place is spectacular. Not just claiming we think really hard about the locations we put our accommodation, proving it. Here's the effort we go to, here's what we love about these communities. So if we go back to that goal of, we know that somebody has got us on their shortlist, that's when social media really matters for them. All the content that they might see is them ticking the box and doing the due diligence. And the things that they heard in, let's face it, the sales pitch up front and they read in the brochure are actually validated by what they're seeing on the social media afterward. Okay, so then we can get down to the actual channels that we're choosing. And we want to be really conscious that the channels we're choosing are part of a journey. People find out about you, they consider you, and they forget about you. Then they might come back a little bit later, and then they might forget again or be distracted by something else going on in the world, but they finally end on their website, on your website. And then they think about you, and then maybe they buy, and maybe they buy on the spot, and then maybe they have a relationship afterwards. But this is a journey with a lot of drop off along the way. So whenever we're doing something on social media, we need to be considering what's happening immediately before. So where are they coming from? Are they landing here off the back of an ad and nothing else? Are they landing here off the back of having come into a center and spoken to somebody? Are they coming here off the back of a conference that they've just been to? So what's happened before? And then the question is, what's going to happen after? What are we ultimately driving them toward? What's the next step in their journey that we need to direct them to? Sometimes we can get really specific about this. So remember when I said at the start, we want to understand triggers and the moments that really matter for them. One exercise that's worth doing is actually mapping the day of your consumer. What are all the things that they're doing on a typical day? What does that journey look like for them? And then we can start to think, where are we best to intersect along the way? And social media may be the right place to do it. But then we can think about if we're posting at lunchtime, what are they doing at lunchtime? If we're posting in the morning, are they on public transport? Are they driving themselves? Is there something else going on? If we're doing the 6 a.m. post to catch people as they wake up and reach for their phone first thing in the morning, what's coming up for them on the day? Really good exercise worth doing. If that's the day, this is the overall journey for your organization as a whole. Remembering that they start off considering you, then they might explore other options, compare, potentially test a few different options. Perhaps there's a negotiation phase for you, perhaps something's a little more spontaneous. But we have to recognize that social media exists to just push people through this journey, one step and then the next and then the next. And we want to know for any given post, any bit of content or any campaign, where is that actually going to land? And doing these two exercises can lead to some interesting results. So a few years ago, I launched a sustainable product, which was a bamboo notebook, basically. Like back in the days when people used to write things. This is only 10 years ago, but it feels like a million years ago. In the same week, this particular product got into the Go Get newsletter, that's the car share company, and the Daily Telegraph. And interestingly enough, getting into the Go Get newsletter vastly outperformed getting into the Daily Telegraph because it was reaching the right kind of people at the right time of their day, at the right point in the world. And it was also much easier, I must say, to get into the Go Get newsletter than it was to get into the Daily Telegraph. Now, getting into a partner's publication means having good content that you can share with them that makes them look good. But it also comes from just recognizing what's going on in their world, what are the things that matter for them, and then connecting with that. Okay. Final kind of topic that I want to deep dive on here is how do you actually amplify your content? So if you're clear on the result, you're clear on the audience you're trying to reach, we know the message and we know the channels that we're getting to. How do you amplify and get more than just what we can reach on our existing channels, our existing followers? There's a couple of things to consider here. So one of the models that you'll hear regularly is this distinction between owned, earned, and paid media. And it always comes in this order because the things that we own, which are your website, your physical brochures, your staff uniforms, your videos, your interactions, the things that you own, we have the most control of. And until those things are looking great, it's not worth going into the other things. So those things need to look great. Those things need to work for you and be converting people first. Conversion before acquisition. Make sure you're capturing everyone who lands on your pages before you worry about getting new people into the ecosystem. Earned social then is when people are doing something that you have to earn it, basically, right? So a partner won't just post for you, even if you ask really nicely. You kind of got to earn it. You got to have a story worth telling. People don't hit share on posts just because you're a nice person. You kind of have to earn it by making them look good in some regard. And then finally, you've got the paid social as well. Now, it's worth remembering that Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, they're there to make money. They don't actually want your post to be seen by everyone possible. They want you to pay for your post to be seen by as many people as possible. One of the unintended and negative consequences of that is that they will also prioritize content that is most likely to keep people engaged, which is usually something that pisses them off, which is why we've got all these issues with poor content, misinformation, going ballistic and going viral. Whereas here we are, all the social enterprises with these positive messages, getting out to 1% of our database next to a little button saying, hey, would you like to pay some money for this to be seen by more people? I get it, it's frustrating, but it's also just that reminder that social media isn't free and it's working within an ecosystem where the big players and the providers want you to be spending a lot of money. So let's look at what the alternatives are around that. So earned distribution. This is when you've earned the right for another player to talk about you. Here's an example from Conscious Steps. Actually, one of my favorite campaigns that we ran with them. So we were coming up to, I think it was our 4th Father's Day since we'd started the business. We're like, right, Father's Day, if ever there was a day when people are buying socks, this is it. How do we make sure our socks are standing out? And at this point, we were supporting some really incredible charities like Room to Read and Action Against Hunger. And we were thinking, oh, well, all the people who support these charities, of course they should be buying these socks, but how do we reach them? Now, when we started Conscious Step, which is a social enterprise, we had a hypothesis that if we could get big charities on board as partners, they just promote us to all their users and be really good at it. We'll get all our new customers from our charity partners. As it turned out, those same charity partners are actually really struggling to promote themselves, let alone partners. And so they might slot us in an item 20 in an email newsletter that comes out once a week, but to see that item 20, you had to click the see the entire email at the bottom, and when you think about how many emails get sent versus how many get opened, how many get extended open and actually get clicked through, it wasn't really working for us. So we had to think more creatively around how do we help them as well as help ourselves. Thanks, Danisha. Thanks for coming. So what we came up with was a campaign around what do you get for Father's Day for the dad who has everything? What you might not realize is that the dads photographed in this campaign are actually senior leaders from the charity organizations we support. Not just our own team, we went and got them. If there is any way to motivate a social media team to post as much as possible a picture that you've taken of your product or series, it's to put their CEO in the picture. I love it. Easiest way to get there. So we had this campaign where we kind of had the know-it-all dad who recites Wikipedia over dinner time and can tell you exactly what year the Huns invaded. What do you get for the know-it-all dad who has everything? Well, you get them the socks that help kids get an education. Or what about foodie dad who's there in the bottom right who Instagrams every single bit of food he takes? Well, yeah, there's the CEO from Action Against Hunger taking a selfie with the food there. So in this case, our audience was actually twofold. There were the people who would eventually see this and would want to be buying socks for us, but it was also recognizing that the partners themselves were an audience we needed to reach. And we went back and did that exercise of what are the triggers, what's going on for them that we can connect with, what are the drivers, what are their pain points, and made things as easy as possible for them to share on. And anybody who touched this campaign looked good as a result of it. Those who published it on social media, they looked good with their boss, who was in the picture, funnily enough, and everyone kind of wins by doing it this way. So creating content that partners can't resist means making stuff that makes them look really good. And this is often where partner content can fall down. It's we still get emails on a regular basis saying, hey, I've written a blog post, would you like to publish it on your Conscious Step newsfeed? And you jump in and read in, it's all about them. Only talks about them. There's nothing of value for Conscious Step to relate it to socks or the particular charities. And every so often somebody comes in with a pitch around something like how charities can be better at incentivizing staff, and they talk about with real generosity around how that can be done, and they mention themselves a little bit in it as well. But because there's actually value in it for our audience, we're much more likely to run with that than something that's basically an ad in disguise. So that's earned distribution. Content curation. This is when you get your users to submit the content that you end up posting. Great example of this campaign was done by Tom's Shoes. So Tom's Shoes is the ethical shoe company. They've done really, really well over in the United States. We basically donated a pair of shoes for every person who submitted a picture of, of them without shoes in really interesting places. And from that, they got a whole bunch of publications. They had a whole bunch of users posting to their networks about why this mattered for them, and a whole bunch of content that they could then use in their own facilities from there on. Another good example of that was, oh no, I won't go into that. It's too much detail, Okay, so again, this works when your audience looks good at their participation. You'll often see promotions saying, hey, share this post and like it and tag it and then tag 3 friends and we'll put you in with a 1 in 10,000 chance of winning a $10 gift card. Doesn't really make the user look good by doing that. Sure, we're tapping into, they really, really want that $10 gift card. But these types of campaigns work best when you remember that your job is to make your audience look good. And then the elephant in the room is that we do actually have to pay for social media. Those algorithms will constrict your content and not show it to everyone, even the really good stuff, even the stuff that's really valuable. So it is worth remembering that social media won't be free, and it is worth allocating a budget for boosting content so it does get seen by all your followers. This is where all those promises from 2012 kind of crumbles when they said social media, it's free and you can do it and go ballistic and go viral. Unfortunately, things don't go viral without the organizations making them viral, making a bit of money out of it as well. 2 ways to do that: have misinformation that pisses people off, that'll go viral, or we've got to pay for content that's really good to be seen. And this is why it goes back to that first conversation we had around strategy and choice, and whether paying to boost content is actually going to be a better performer for you than the other things that you might be doing, like paying for ads, like hiring another salesperson. Great stories go viral too. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. If only the best stories were the ones that were going viral every day, there'd be a lot more viral videos. And the last part on this is influencer marketing. This is, instead of earning a post from a partner, we're actually just paying them, to be honest. And so Conscious Step actually does a lot of this. The amount we pay for influencers to post about Conscious Step range from kind of $200 at the low end into many thousands at the upper end. And sometimes that's a way to really reach the audience that resonates with what you do and reach them really, really quickly. So usually whenever you hear about a campaign where influencer involved, there's usually a financial transaction there. Again, if you want to be an influencer, you can buy 1 million followers very quickly. Some of them try and do that. They usually get caught eventually, so don't do that. But when there is someone who's talking on a topic that really matters to you, it can be more effective to get them posting about you rather than having to pay to boost through your own network. So keep that in mind as part of the mix. All right, couple of tools for execution. So usually there's a question around, all right, but how do I make this easy? What's the best tool? What's the best app out there? So here's just a quick run through of some of the things that might make your life easier. Preview is a really good way of checking how all your posts are going to look when they're out on the page. Like, does it make a good mix? Are you trying to make a pattern there that's quite striking? It's a visual planning tool, so Preview is a really good one. Animoto, quick way to make videos. As much as possible, I'd recommend not using static when you can do video. If you've created a static graphic, some tools like Animoto can very quickly turn that into animation, movement, a little bit of effects. It's more likely to get someone's attention when they're doing this on their phone than a static image. So have a look at some of these tools that make it much easier to do that. Canva, I love Canva. Canva's just awesome for doing this. They've got one-click buttons for animating your posts. My one word of warning with Canva is sometimes it can be overstimulating. And some brands discover Canva and go, oh my God, there's 10,000 templates here. And so every single post looks completely different and from a different brand. So this is where you've got to really rein in the enthusiasm and use Canva for inspiration, but try and be consistent in your brand and your message. You want people to recognize content as yours the moment they see it, not have a different style every single day just because there's a template there. But yeah, Canva's awesome. Canva also has free professional plans for nonprofits if you're registered that way. while we're talking about nonprofits, because I didn't include this as a slide, if you're a nonprofit, make sure you're also getting Google's ad grant. You can get $10,000 a month of free search advertising through them. If you're like Conscious Step and you have charities registered in multiple countries, you can claim that grant for each country you're registered in. That adds up to a really good budget. So don't miss out on that if you're a nonprofit. Click to tweet. When you're working on Twitter, this is the fastest way to get your blogs and your other content Twitter ready and interacted there. BuzzSumo, this is what we use to keep track of what your competitors are doing, what kind of topics are coming up. That process of getting into your audience psychology it's worth recognizing that is also changing on a daily basis. So this is one of the quick ways to stay across what's happening there. Hootsuite is the go-to tool for planning. Once you've got all your content, once you've got your campaign, hop it into Hootsuite so you know exactly when it's going, so you don't have to be the person waking up at 5 a.m. to post just in time for everybody waking up that morning. And Trello, likewise, is a really good collaboration tool for getting multiple people working across your social media campaigns. So I'm going to skip through that stuff and just anchor us back to here and open it up for a bit more of a conversation. So I said if there was only one thing you took away from today, it's this. It's the RAM model. Get it? The result, audience, message, medium. There's that helpful little RAM. If there's only one thing you take away, it's this. Whenever somebody comes up with an idea for your social media, always anchor them back to result. Get really tightly defined on what result you're trying to achieve. Have that conversation of who you're really trying to reach. You don't need your message to appeal to everybody. You just need it to appeal to the right people for that result. And then the message that you tell is going to be the right message for that audience to get that result. And then your choice of channels, tools, formats, amplification, are all about what's the best way to get that message in front of that audience to get that result. So I'm going to leave that on screen. There's the thank you slide, but that's basically what we've got for the content today. I'm happy to open it up for more of a conversational style in the next 30 minutes. Let's do some problem solving and deep dive on what are you actually struggling with right now. So if it's time for you to pop off to another meeting, thank you so much for coming. If you want to go a bit deeper on some things, stick around, let's have a chat, let's unpack some of those questions. And thank you very much. If this was in person, there'd usually be rapturous applause. So let's assume that just happened and we're ready to go into questions. All right, does anybody have a specific question they want me to answer? You might just copy and paste from your earlier one if you prefer. That's okay too. Thank you. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, I'm scrolling back to the start just to see what are the specific questions.
Adam, we have a couple of questions at the bottom.
Yeah, we tried to pay for posts with miserable results. Yeah, I feel for you. It's there's no channel that's going to help us reach every audience all of the time. So this goes back to, in fact, I've got a good slide on that in another deck. Let me just bring something up. Yeah, I think my message around the reaching those audiences is just recognizing that it's just got to be part of your mix. There's no golden ticket to getting the right ones. The other things to consider with social media is often there's some learning algorithm. The algorithm needs to learn what's really working for you. So whether you're running paid ads or promoting content, it's looking for indicators of who it's resonating with before it puts it out. So if you're going to pay to boost a post, make sure you're only boosting the ones that are already doing well. Only your top performers, your top 10, 20%. And I know that's frustrating because sometimes there's a really important message that you've got and it hasn't been a top performer. That's information you just need to take on board and say, all right, is there another way of presenting this that's going to resonate more or be more interactive? wait till you've got a better performing version of that same message before you pay to boost it. So Brad's asking about LinkedIn, apparently best for B2B exposure. How can I target the right people in an organization, the decision makers, shall we say? So LinkedIn is a social media network that ultimately became a CRM for salespeople. So if we go through that process of result, audience, message, medium, and just stop on audience for a minute and think about the decision makers that we're trying to reach on LinkedIn. So a typical C-suite executive, whether they're CTO or CEO, will be getting sort of 10, 20 plus LinkedIn requests a day. Now, about 15 of them are from people trying to sell them things. And most of them are saying the same thing. There's a group of people who turn up and saying, hey, I was just looking to expand my network and wanted to connect. And that's it. You can kind of tell because they say, I'm a B2B lead generation expert in their titles. Like, oh, that one's going to be an ad. The second group kind of turn up with an assumption. They say, I know you're having issues with X. I've got a 10,000% uplift for company Y. Should we chat? And it's very clear that there's almost like a bulldozer effect going on in those. So those often don't get through as well. The ones that do get through are the ones that play with the connections. It's, hey, I was talking to person X and they suggested we get in touch. It's kind of engineering your own referrals. That's the way to connect with people in a way that's more meaningful when there is a genuine link between them. So if that means you're still 6 steps removed from interacting with the right decision maker, the frustrating news is you've got to work through those connections. It's not about going straight to the CEO of an organization and trying to pitch in the first interaction. It's trying to work through the network around them. That example from the start about when the World Economic Forum made the video about conscious step. Again, that was not by getting to the top of the organization. I did also meet with the chairman of the World Economic Forum. He also wears the socks, which is great, but wasn't getting on his side that got us the outcome that was valuable for us. It was working on the network around the decision makers as well. Hope that helps. Any advice on how to use Facebook targeting more effectively? So yeah, look, if you're doing paid ads, think of it as a constant experiment. So one of the organizations that I work with that are doing this best is a startup in Sydney called GoFar. And in any given week, they will brainstorm sort of 4 or 5 new ideas for ads, and they'll give them a tiny little bit of budget, only a couple of dollars a day, like really small just to start with. And they will play around with the messaging and the targeting and look at which ones are outperforming the others and take kind of an evolutionary approach. Say, all right, well, this one's outperforming the others. Let's double the budgets, but also come up with a couple of variations of that. And so now we've got 5 variations of that top performer with twice as much budget as originally. Again, you see which of those 5 is performing the best, and scaling up what's working is the best way to do it. That also gives the algorithm time to learn what's most effective for it. So generally increasing your budgets by more than 20% in one go usually causes the algorithm to kind of make drastic leaps. Say, oh, I've got to spend twice as much money. I'll put the ad in front of that person and that person and that person. I mean, to personify an algorithm, that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes. So incrementally increase your budgets and use kind of an evolutionary approach where you're taking what works and scale it up. What I think is the biggest social trend that will emerge in the future? Whoa, that's a big question. I don't know. What do you think, Howard? You jump off mute if you like and tell me what you think.
Just need to find the crystal ball, I think. But it's the way it's emerged so quickly recently over the last few years. Who knows where we'll be in the next couple of years, but yeah, it's who knows.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing to be aware of is what's called the hype cycle. So every so often something new will come along, like TikTok came along, and then last year it was Clubhouse, and everyone kept saying, oh, are you on Clubhouse yet? Are you on Clubhouse? Clubhouse is where it's at. We've got to get on and claim our spot there. So just wait, just give it 3 weeks, take a breath and let it play out and then see where it lands. So often what happens when something new and exciting comes along in social media, you get this massive spike up front of attention towards it. And then it drops down into what they call the trough of despair, where people go, oh, but everybody loved it last week. Why does nobody like it this week? And then it slowly builds at a little more reasonable rate as it finds its real audience. So when something like TikTok or Clubhouse comes along, if you're particularly interested, yeah, you can jump on and claim your name or your handle, but it's not the biggest issue in the world if you don't. But give it a couple of weeks to discover who the real audience is, and then have a look and say, all right, who's stuck around here after the initial hype has lasted? Are these people we want to be interacting with? And if they are, great. Get on there, be all over that. And if not, it's okay to say no to them. Any tips for staying sane while doing social media marketing? Doom scrolling, obsessively following numbers. Yeah, I feel for you. Having devices without the apps installed go a really, really long way. Turning off all notifications. So, I mean, my phone at any given time will always be on do not disturb. It means I never answer my phone, to the frustration of some people who know me, but it just gives me a chance to be deliberate about these things rather than stuck in them. Look, someone asked in the questions when they bought a ticket, is the mental impact of being on social media worth it for an organization? And I think in some cases it's actually not. These are tools that are designed to addict people, get them in their kind of weak and vulnerable state, and just get them obsessed with clicking and scrolling, because that's how they make their money. So again, keep it as part of a mix, and remember, if we can show up with value for our customers, that's always going to be the thing that makes the biggest difference. If we can help make their lives better in some way, or share messages that are helpful, that can absolutely help. But yeah, try to keep the apps off your phone if possible.
Adam, I've got a question that I might just ask rather than typing it in. I guess this is a private versus professional perspective that I'm seeking. I'm not hugely active on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the rest of it. How important is that in the context of my organization's engagement? You know, so my LinkedIn page has my organization's name and title and all the rest of it. Our organization has its own LinkedIn page. Is there a correlation between the two? And to help AVI be more active or present on LinkedIn, is it important for me to be more active and present?
Great, that's a really good question. So the two things that come out of that are the results you're after and the audience that you need to reach, of course. And I'm going to sound like a broken record on that front. So if the connections that you personally are making are essential connections for the success of the organization, then yeah, it's worth being active and making sure you're communicating with them. If not, if the people that are most important for the organization are actually in other circles, in other pools, it's okay to back off from that and not feel obliged to be posting regularly. So LinkedIn, I think, is it's an interesting tool. It's often used as the resume, or it's almost like a second about us page for an organization. If someone goes, oh, I really want to know what's happening inside this organization, they'll look them up on LinkedIn, see who works there, see kind of the makeup of the org structure, what type of people, do they know anybody there? So it's well worth for any organization to have all their team on LinkedIn, have a clear profile, have their association with the organization listed, and have a clear description of the organization in their profile. Beyond that, should come down to an individual. I've met people whose personal brand was really important regardless of which organization they were working with. It basically became part of their value proposition as they went from job to job and organization to organization, that they had a network of followers they brought with them. And that does take a little bit of time to build up an investment to get there. But again, that came back to the individual's result, not necessarily the organization's result. Does that help? Good. Sounds exhausting. Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be. It's I mean, as with all things, like anything related to marketing or even to-do lists or new ideas for an organization, there's always more that could be done and can be done. And whatever you're doing, it's okay to be okay with it being enough. Any other questions? Have for you to jump off mute if that helps. Hello. Oh no, that was a goodbye wave, not a hello. All right, well, Jess, I think we might wrap it up there then, given that there's no further questions. So if you do want to follow up with me, oh geez, that's tiny, isn't it? That says Adam Long, the Ethical CEO. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am actually somewhat active on LinkedIn. Feel free to get in touch with me or through the Social Impact Hub. I'm one of the professional impact network there, so help with a lot of the organizations on their strategy and marketing, and looking forward to connecting soon. Thanks, everybody, and have an amazing Friday. Have an amazing weekend. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. That's been such a wonderful and lots of jam-packed content in that 90 minutes. And definitely we'll be sharing the recording afterwards. So you might want to re-watch the recording and jot some notes down if you haven't captured everything. I have popped in the survey. It's probably gone up a bit now, but we really appreciate your feedback so we can see what we can do to improve. And we've also got another workshop coming up on the 27th of August in this workshop series on social procurement. So if you're keen to understand how procurement works in organizations and hear how social enterprises have successfully delivered services to businesses, we'll be hearing from social traders and Westpac on more about social procurement then. Otherwise, have a great day, have a great weekend, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.